Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is a new video series on learning Ruby. Okay, so I'm going to start off with first, this is going to be our setup video. We're going to set up our environment. I'm using RubyMine, which is a IDE from JetBrains. So let's just first show that. So the first thing you need to really do is just install Ruby. So you can head over to rubylang.org, read the documentation on how to install Ruby for your operating system. Of course, things are always slightly different for Mac, Linux, different flavors of Linux, Windows. So look for a tutorial that will walk you through installing Ruby on your machine. Okay, and just to kind of iterate that point. So make sure you have Ruby, and you can always just check if you have Ruby by seeing what version of Ruby you have. So I'm running version 2.6, 2.5. Okay, so there's the details of my version of Ruby that I kept currently installed. Okay, so I want to make sure that you have installed. So if you run that command and it doesn't give you a version, you don't have it installed. Okay, and again, I'm running this version, so if you're installing it as you watch this video series, you should end up having the same or later version as you see there. Okay, cool. So you want to install Ruby first. That's first off, and let's go to JetBrains just so you can see where if you want to get RubyMine. JetBrains. Cool. Let's see. Let's go find tools. And we're talking about RubyMine here. Let's see what their offerings are. Yeah, this is, you have to pay for it. So you could try out the 30-day trial if you want to use the same IDE as I am in this particular video series, or you can use any of the other ones, which include Atom. Okay, Atom's fine. Okay, so atom.io, or you can use Visual Studio Code. All of these work just fine. You're going to have a pretty much similar experience as you're seeing here. Main thing is having Ruby installed. Okay. So once you have Ruby installed, you have some sort of editor, which it could be any of the three that I just mentioned. There's other ones, but I want to name those. Okay, so here I go. I have RubyMine opened and installed. I'm going to create a new project. Okay. And let's see, we're going to see what the location of, again, I'm mostly a JavaScript developer. Python probably my second strongest language, along with Go. So I never actually had to use Ruby's SDKs, but just to kind of give you a quick tour here. Okay, a gem is kind of like a package. So if you're familiar with JavaScript, a node package is the same as like a Ruby gem, or a package installed through pip in Python. Or when one of the packages you install using well, Go doesn't really have a really catchy pithy name for those yet. Okay, but by running the go get command, but bottom line, it's a package. And really, Ruby was kind of really one of the first to have these kind of modern day package managers as a language, because let's see here, Ruby introduced the whole sort of gem file system I think in 2004. Pip for Python was released in 2008, and the Node Package Manager (npm) was released 2010. So a lot of this stuff was really cutting edge back in those days. Things like Ruby on Rails, gem files. This introduced sort of a really cool sort of development ecosystem at a time when people wanted it, people needed it. Ruby on Rails really created a killer way of developing web applications that made life really easier, because it would handle things like migrations and set up your database for you and make setting up your routes much easier. Nowadays, you can find similar frameworks that kind of offer that robust experience in all languages, such as Django for Python. There's a few for Node, things like Adonis.js and Sales.js. Go with Buffalo. But a lot of that came from Ruby. Ruby was sort of like a language that kind of offers sort of the ease of learning that Python did, because it has a very simple syntax as well. You'll see it's a little bit different. It's not tab based. It's more like it's more word command based, but still lot less curly brackets. But again, it offered a lot of these early conveniences of package management, robust web frameworks, whatnot. Still a popular language that can still do a lot of stuff. You still have a lot of other web frameworks other than Ruby on Rails. You have other libraries that allow you to create mobile applications and do other things. And then one last piece before we actually dive into it is, always the issue with like Ruby and Python is that they're interpreted languages, which means that when you run them, your computer's doing multiple things. It's not just running the file, it's actually reading the code, so reading the Ruby or Python code, translating it into machine code, it's being interpreted, and then it actually runs the code. Okay, so there's a little bit of overhead for the computer to run those files. That's why they're referred to as scripting languages, because they're really meant to handle like quick scripts that you're just going to write on the fly and run. You can do pretty robust stuff with it. Generally, when it comes to much more intensive software, you'd use a compiled language. So that way, you do all that interpreting and compiling to machine-readable language before the user ever uses it. So that way, that overhead is out of the picture, and the user is just running the raw machine code. Okay, so this is like C++, Go. But people like Ruby, people like Python, and they like those languages, and so wouldn't it be nice if you could compile them? So in the world of Ruby, there is sort of a compiled version of Ruby referred to as Crystal. So that's another programming language called Crystal. It's pretty much the same syntax as Ruby with some differences and a different sort of developer environment. And then for Python, there's a programming language called Nim, which is very similar in syntax to Python, but it's compiled and does have differences because of that compilation nature, different environment. But just so you're aware, if you do ever get to a point where you need to kind of increase that speed, but you want to keep working with sort of the same syntax, you have options. Cool. So let's create a project. So we need to choose a project folder. Okay, let's see here. It's loading up all my folder structure. And let's see here. I'm going to go to my home, Alex Merced. Okay, yeah, that's where I was doing all the PyCharm stuff. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here for RubyMine. Okay, and then in that folder, I'm going to create another folder called testing. This is what we're going to work out of. Okie dokie. And we'll create that. Let that build itself out. So I'll just drag that window over here. And that's sort of setting up the project and all this stuff. And that's the beauty of using something like RubyMine, because it tailors itself to a Ruby experience, so it sets up a lot of that stuff that you would otherwise have to set up. Although again, we could just run a basic Ruby file right out of VS Code without much issue, and that's pretty much what we'll be doing. But again, trying to manage multiple birds with a single stone. Okay, so basically here we go. We're at our project point. So now we just need to create a file. So once this thing is, as you can see, it's still indexing and setting everything up. Okay, I'll right click over here in our folder. I want to create new. I want to create a new Ruby file. We're going to call it testing. And it will eventually create the file. Yep, there it is. And again, Ruby files always have the extension of .rb. That's a Ruby file. Cool. Okay. Always the first thing you want to learn before just in general. So again, we want to also open up our terminal. So you go down here, you can open up the terminal, which is the same thing as opening up like a bash terminal here, but just right here inside your environment. So it's right in our folder, so that's convenient. Okay. Okay, and then we do the following. No Ruby interpreter. So let's configure that. It's saying, well, if there's no Ruby interpreter, then it's not going to be able to interpret it. But I'm going to run it from the command line anyway, so not. But let's see here. It already opened up. Yep, I want that. There you go. Okay. Anyways, the first thing you always want to do is hello world. And in Ruby, the command, so basically print in Python to print stuff to the screen, console.log in JavaScript, fmt.print in Go. So you always have that command. And here it's puts, meaning like put stuff to the screen. So puts, and then it should just be hello world because it's a string, so we have to put the quotation marks. And that should do it. There's one line of code here. Should be all you need to have your first Ruby program. So then we just type in Ruby. So that way we know that we're letting the Ruby software run this file. And then we just type in testing.rb. Hit enter. And it should just put hello world. There you go. You've just done your first Ruby script. Congratulations. You are now a software developer. You have developed software. With that, I am going to end this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video where we'll do more work.